So what is Islamic pedagogy, and how does Islamic pedagogy shape the program or make the program distinct from others?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think Islamic pedagogy is probably best defined as education within the Islamic tradition. And what I mean by that is education, its perspectives, its philosophy, its values, um, concepts that are within the Islamic tradition. These are what we're looking at is how is education defined within the broad Islamic tradition. And when I say Islamic tradition, I mean not just the Quran and the Sunnah, but people that have written about Islamic education, classical scholars, contemporary scholars, including models of schooling. So people often refer to, madrasas from a few centuries ago. Those are as relevant as schools that we have today, because all of these are examples of institutions, educational institutions, and educators that have been grappling with what education means from within the conception or the tradition, the broad tradition of Islam.
So then who should enroll in the grad cert in education or in Islamic education?
I think the ideal people that would be interested in a program like this are people who have been working in Islamic schools for 1, 5, 15 years, 25 years, people who are committed to the field of Islamic schooling and who say to themselves, I'm committed to Islamic schooling as a sector, but at the same time, I recognize that I have gone through a teacher education program, a secular teacher education program. I've learned the educational theories that are out there that define what education is and what education in contemporary schools looks like. But I don't have a sense or a grounding necessarily of what education from within the Islamic tradition looks like. So I think the ideal candidate for a program like ours are people who are passionate about Islamic schooling, people who have a long-term vision and want to see the growth of Islamic schooling, and who recognize that, look, our Islamic schools have achieved a lot, but at the same time, there's a long way to go toward renewal of developing an authentic model of Islamic schooling.
So many educators talk of being overloaded and sometimes overwhelmed. How relevant is the grad cert in our daily realities, and how practical is it?
Yeah, the question of being practical is an important question, because a lot of educators are very nervous about going back to school, going back to an educational setting. And I don't want to shy away from saying that this is not going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging in the sense that it will be intense in terms of the types of readings you're doing, the presentations you have to watch, the dialogue and discourse that's happening with your colleagues online. It does require a fair amount of effort. But at the same time, I would say that it's an effort that will be very rewarding in pushing your thinking. And when I say that it has practical benefits, I think what we've tried to do is design the program in a way where the readings, the discussions, the reflective pieces, and the assessments all have practical benefit for your classroom experience. So looking at your lesson plans, rethinking school policies, rethinking classroom policies, rethinking your actual pedagogical practice in classrooms. It's intended that through the assessments, through the conversations, through the reflections, you're constantly rethinking your own practice and what you do in school.
So I've heard that you refer to an imbalance in terms of the focus of our collective attention and efforts in Islamic schooling. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, I've spoken about this a lot, and I think I feel strongly about it. I feel that there has been an imbalance in the past 30 years in our Islamic schooling sector on an emphasis on curriculum. And we talk about curriculum development, we talk about curriculum integration, we talk about Islamization, we speak about Islamic studies as a key learning area that needs to be improved. And it's all content-based. So whether we're speaking about integration or we're speaking about Islamic studies, it's all making the assumption that if we had a better curriculum, better textbooks, refined learning outcomes, somehow that would solve the presumed crisis of Islamic schooling. And I think we need to change the language and change the way we think about the challenges we have in Islamic schools. I think we need to celebrate the fact that we've spent a lot of time on curriculum and acknowledge that we've made some significant achievements, but at the same time, acknowledge that renewal of our schools, the next phase of renewal of our schools will not come through curriculum necessarily, but through our pedagogy, through the way that we interact and teach and engage the students in our schools. And we know that in the Islamic tradition, that an essential part of our teaching is what's transferred between hearts.
Yes.
So irrespective of the best, curriculum that we can put on our tables, what we need to do is really be reflective in thinking about what it is that we bring as educators to Islamic schools. So I think when I speak about the imbalance, what I'm saying is let's start to put more of an emphasis on ourselves as educators in being self-reflective of what it means to be an educator in an Islamic school.
You have been a strong advocate and champion for teacher training programs for Islamic school educators for many years. I have also heard you pose the question, have we left it to chance? What do you mean by this?
Yeah, what I mean by have we left it to chance is I often quote different schooling sectors, Montessori, Catholic education, Aboriginal education, Jewish education, Lutheran education. And I say to myself, none of these education sectors would assume that a teacher can work in their schools without a professional development program, without a teacher education program that prepares them for that specific schooling context.
That's right.
And I say for myself, for my child or your child, you wouldn't send your child to a Montessori program that says we have teachers who are not Montessori trained.
That's right.
People wouldn't send their children to a Catholic school that says we have a lot of educators that have no background in Catholic education. And it's not just Catholic theology to say, oh, we want teachers to be prepared in Catholic theology or Lutheran theology or Jewish theology. We're saying when you go to a Catholic teacher education program, it prepares you for the context, the ethos of that school context. So whether you're a practicing Catholic or an observant Catholic, doesn't matter. If you're going to be working in that institution, in that schooling context, the teacher education program in Catholic education or Jewish education prepares you for working in a faith-based ethos that is distinct. Now, if we agree that Islamic schools have something distinct to offer, then the question is, why have we left the preparation of our teachers to chance?
Islamic schools are well known for high academic achievement, school ranking, and so on. More and more we see innovative practice around well-being and welfare programs, STEM or STEAM, and curriculum integration. Where does a grad cert in Islamic education underpinned by Islamic pedagogy fit?
I think, look, all of these achievements that we have seen in the past decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of Islamic schooling around school accreditation, around academic achievement, around really amazing school buildings in many cases, I think are testament to the amount of effort that the tireless effort that educators have been putting into the growth of our Islamic schools globally. So in the United States, Australia, Canada, you see some really, United Kingdom, you see some amazing Islamic schools coming up that are celebrating successes around academic achievement, around school accreditation, and so on. I think where Islamic pedagogy comes in is that sense of renewal, right? So we have, in many ways, we've achieved and put ourselves at par with other private schools that we are competing against, that we feel we're being pinned against, and I think that's an important achievement. But at the same time, we recognize that we've put a lot of effort on the necessity to perform in relation to other schools, but at the expense of thinking about what makes our schools distinct. So we've often left the distinction, the distinction to be religious studies, i.e. Islamic studies, or it be an Islamic ethos, but not necessarily delving into that at a deeper level in terms of a philosophy of education that defines our schools as being a distinct space, that then is transferred through our teacher education programs, through our teacher preparation, whether it be pre-service or in-service, to prepare every educator, Muslim or not Muslim, observant or not observant, or practicing it in a way that we agree with or not, doesn't really matter. If you're working in an Islamic school, it's about creating that sense of what is it that defines our distinction, and how are we preparing our teachers for it. So, I think we, in many ways, need to celebrate the achievements we've had and are continuing to have, but at the same time, think about what's the next step for renewal. And I would put forth the conception of Islamic pedagogy as being that catalyst toward ongoing school renewal.
Definitely. Thank you.